Let us study the Shema, and I want to start with the explanation of the Baal HaTurim, and from there we'll go to, after we look at the Shema and the Baal HaTurim's explanation, then we'll look at some of the other classic explanations of the Shema. Of course, we'll look at Rashi and we'll look at the commentaries of the Rashi. So the Shema appears in only one place in the Torah that appears in Deuteronomy, in chapter 6, verses 4 through 9. This is the Shema. Of course, is there anyone who doesn't? Every Jew, even if you don't know anything, the minimum is the Shema. And that's how on October 7th, when the brave soldiers of the IDF were going to rescue Jews, they were asking them to recite the Shema because the terrorists were hiding themselves as trying to pretend that they were Jewish. So that was the difference. That was the differentiator, the marker. How we knew that the people were Jewish was with recitation of the Shema Yisrael. And so in this context, let's look at the Shema as it appears in our Parshas Vaetchanan. So the first pasuk is chapter 6, verse 4. And I had said we'll start with the Baal HaTurim, but that would be a mistake. We always have to start with Rashi. We can never jump over Rashi, ever. So it says, we'll just do one pasuk at a time. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Listen, O Israel, or hear, O Israel. Hashem is our God, Hashem is one. So Rashi tells us, listen, O Israel, Hashem is our God, Hashem is one. Rashi tells us, Hashem, Shehu Elokeinu Ata, Hashem, who right now is our God, and not the gods of the other nations, meaning the other nations of the world don't recognize God. Hu Atir Liot Hashem Echad. In the future, will be one God. Right now, it's He's just ours. But in the future, the whole world will recognize the unity of God. Hashem Elokeinu, right now Hashem is our God, but in the future, Hashem will be one. And then I will change all the nations to speak a clear language, as it says in Safanya. They'll all call out in the name of God, as it says in Zechariah, and as we say in the Aleinu. On that day, Hashem will be one, and His name will be one. We know that, just before I go to the Baal HaTurim, I promise to say something from Dudai Ruvain, that there's a classic Dudai Ruvain, that why, when Yaakov Avinu sees Yosef for the first time, it says that Yosef was crying. It says that Yosef Avinu was crying, but it doesn't say what Yaakov was doing. So why wasn't Yaakov Avinu crying? Yosef HaTzadik was crying when he sees his father Jacob in Egypt. He hasn't seen him for all these years. But Yaakov Avinu doesn't say he was crying. Because he cried. So why wasn't Yaakov crying when he sees his son? So Rashi says, based upon the Gemara, Yaakov was reciting the Shema. Yaakov was reciting the Shema at that moment. So that's the Dudai Ruvain. Of all the times in the world to recite the Shema, that's the time he has to choose. All of a sudden, that's when you have to daven Shema. He couldn't have recited Shema 5 minutes later. So what's the explanation? Why is he reciting Shema at that moment? So there's another Gemara. The Gemara says, how do we read the pasuk Shema Yisrael? Listen, Israel, Hashem is our God, Hashem is one. So the pasuk is telling us that Says the Gemara, you could read it as, listen, Israel, listen, Jewish people, have faith in God. Hashem our God, Hashem is one. Or you could read it like this, that the sons of Jacob said to Jacob, Jacob was seeing his sons in Egypt, and he was worried maybe one of them would not be keeping the faith, keeping the tradition. He was worried that they were going to deviate from the path. So they said, Shema Yisrael, listen, Israel, our father, whose name is Israel, listen, we believe in one God. And that's what Rashi was, that's what the Dai Reuben says Yaakov Avinu was doing at that moment. He could have been, he was concerned, he was deeply concerned that Yosef was in Egypt. Maybe Yosef would have become an Egyptian. He would have deviated from the path. But he sees at that moment that Yosef HaTzadik was accepting the yoke of heaven, was deeply connected to his faith, even though he was in Egypt. And that's why he said, after reciting the Shema at that moment, it was an indication at that moment that Yosef HaTzadik had accepted the yoke of heaven even while he was in Egypt. Well-known to Dai Reuven on this beautiful pasuk of Shema and the midrash that Yaakov had to recite it at that moment. I want to share thank God, Baruch Hashem, I've had the honor to write this pasuk many times. Because this pasuk Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad appears once in the Torah, and right now I'm in the middle of, thank God, my 8th Torah. We should have the strength to write many more. It appears once in the Torah. But it appears also every time we write a mezuzah, and when we write the tefillin, we write this twice. So I've had the honor to write tefillin, which I don't like to write because it's too nerve-wracking, and also mezuzahs. I've written many mezuzahs. Baruch Hashem, you write it in every mezuzah. So when you write the Shema, the ayin of Shema is big, and the daled of Shema is big. Shema, the word Shema is an ayin at the end. That ayin is written large, and it also has Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, and the daled is large. So why is this the case? So the Baal Turim is very powerful on this pasuk. So we're going to see what the Baal Turim says. He says Shema Yisrael. Right, it's the Baal Turim. Ayin de Shema Gedola. The ayin of the word Shema is written large. It's a large letter. There's Otiot Rabati and Otiot Zuta. There are letters that are big and big letters that are small. So the ayin of Shema is big, is written large. Shebeshivim Shemot Yesh Yisrael. So the Baal Turim says it's to hint to the fact that there are 70 names of Israel. And we'll read the commentary in a moment after this. And in addition to that, God gave the Torah to them in 70. God gave them the Torah, and the Torah has 70 names. There are 70 names to the Torah. There are 70 different names to the Torah. And the Torah is expounded in 70 ways. So there are 70 names of Israel. Each one of the names of Israel has received the Torah, which has 70 names. And each one of these 70 names of the Torah can be expounded in 70 ways. And in order to distinguish between the Israel and the 70 nations of the world. We're going to come back to this in a moment, but I just want to first say, so why does he say that there's a daled? Why is the daled big? And the daled is big to tell you it's to tell you hold on one second. The Dalet is big to tell you that as follows: that the Jewish people should recognize God as our King in heaven and earth and in the four directions of the world. And also, you should not mistakenly read this as Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Acher with a resh and not a daled. If you read it with a resh and not a daled, you're reading that God is another. Our Hashem is another, meaning to say there's another God and not one God, which is the opposite of what we're really trying to say. And also, when we write the pasuk, el acher, you shall not bow down to another God. There you have to write the resh larger. And that's actually the most difficult letter for me to write in Torah, because there's very little difference between a large resh and a final chaf. They look very similar. So you have to, it's to distinguish it from a daled and from a resh. Another explanation is that the ayin and the daled are written larger because together they spell witness. V'zeu atem edai ne'um Hashem. You are my witnesses. Every time we recite Shema, we're bearing witness to God. We're bearing witness to God. Also, he didn't say this, but some say that Shema is written Shema with a large ayin, so we don't read it as Shema. Perhaps that when it comes to this declaration of our faith, there can't be any equivocation. We state it with certainty. Listen, Israel, this is something you have to be certain about. You can't equivocate. So the Baal Turim, and we're going to go into his explanations much deeper, but he said right now several explanations for why the ayin and the daled are big. One is the ayin represents the 70 expressions of the Torah, the 70 expressions of Israel, 70 ways to expound the Torah, the distinction between us and the 70 nations of the world. And also I added on that you don't read it as Shema, you don't read it as perhaps, you read it as listen with certainty. And then you're reading it as Hashem is our God, Hashem Echad, one, that with the daled to tell us this idea. Why is the daled big? To tell us that we're accepting God in the four. Daled represents the four directions of the world. And also that we don't mistakenly read it as God is another, God forbid. And also that it's to bear witness, that it spells aid, it's a witness. And also to read it, and also that we were saying that we're not reading it as a resh, we read it as we're reading it as a witness. And there's one more explanation, and that is, I didn't mention this yet, because together it spells shade. The Shema begins with a shin and ends with a daled, spells a demon, meaning to say that if somebody recites the Shema with the proper intent, it chases away the demons of the world. That's why people recite it when we're feeling the danger. So let me just pause for a moment before I go into the commentary explaining this. Okay, so going through the commentary of the Baal Turim, because it's written with so much sod, so much Kabbalah, that it takes a long time to understand it. So the word Shema can be read as Shem and Ayin, name and 70. Now, this refers to the 70 names of the Jewish people. Where else? Oh, I have to get one more book here. 1 second. Where else does the Baal Turim refer to the 70 names of the Jewish people? Do you want to know what our other names are? So we want to know what the other names of Jewish people are. Yeah. 7 verse 16, and there the Baal Turim lists the 70 names of God, and also then he also lists the 70 names of he lists the 70 names of the Jewish people. So these are all listed here. It's too many for us to list now, but he lists the names of God going on. There's a lot of different, here are some of the names of the Jewish people. They are the following. The names of the Jewish people are Ancient Nurim, bride of his youth, elms of righteous, chiefs, brothers, beloved, nation, mother, men of distinction, Ephraim, mighty one, dignitaries, nut, awe-inspiring, union, children, Joseph, Yehudim, Yeladim, Yedidim, Kala. Anyway, he goes on. So these are the 70 names. So just so everybody can, if you want to ever look it up, look up chapter 11, verse 16 of Bamidbar, you'll see the Baal Turim lists all the 70 names. And then, okay, so now the next thing the Baal Turim says, now this is not actually written in the Torah, but they're in every Chumash it's written this way, but in the actual Torah scroll itself, it's not written. It says, listen, O Israel, Hashem is our God, Hashem is one, but between Hashem and Echad, there's a pause, there's a break. Now remember I said, by the way, one of the explanations of Echad, that it's a large daled, is to remind us that we're accepting the yoke of heaven upon ourselves in all four directions. And that's why many have the practice to extend the letter Daled when we say it. We'll come up to that in a few moments, remind me. But now there's there's trop, which is the tune, the notes that we use. So there's a trop called a psik. Psik is a break. So there's like a musical notation called a trop that between Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem, we pause. There's a psik. We're supposed to pause and then write echad, and then say one. Meaning to say that, and what this teaches us as the Baal Turim is that the Jewish people were being told at this moment is telling us at this moment, Bnei Yisrael were told, although you saw several different, although you saw several different manifestations, means that God appears in different ways. God appears as the God of judgment, God of mercy, God of vengeance. Nevertheless, even though you see many different aspects of God, all are considered to be one. So that's why we have to pause to reflect upon this fact. All this is, we're supposed to have this intent when we're reciting the Shema. And then we recite Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. And the word Echad is a large daled. And the first explanation, like I was referring to, is that it's to tell us that we accept God upon ourselves in all of the four dominions, the east, west, north, and south. And also the heavens and the earth. The problem with that is that would make six. You have the four directions plus the heaven and the earth. That makes six, not four. So we should have a vav. And okay, people deal with that explanation. Then the Baal Turim writes as follows. The Baal Turim doesn't write this here, but he writes it in his code of law. The Baal Turim here is giving a commentary on the Torah, but he also writes a code of Jewish law called the Torah, in which he tells us how we're supposed to recite the Shema. And he says when you recite the Shema, you have to extend the letter Chet, like that, to think that God is one in the heavens and the earth. So you have to extend it. Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Yeah, I know it sounds like I'm clearing my throat. When you're doing it, you're saying that God is one on heaven and earth. And then while you enunciate the Daled, then you're supposed to elongate, to say Echad, to remember while you're reciting that, you should be thinking that God is above all the four directions of the world. And so therefore, these are some of the ideas we have to think about when reciting the Shema. So that's just the first pasuk, which should be in our mind when we recite the Shema. Now we come to the second verse. Before we get to the second verse, can't just go on from the Shema without saying some other Hasidic explanations of the Shema, some beautiful Hasidic explanations, because this is the verse. If you're Jewish only, you're supposed to know one verse. You always have to know the verse of the Shema by heart, because can you imagine when you need to know it, you really need it. Like when you have a Shema emergency, God forbid, you need to know the Shema. There's no getting around that. So it's arguably the most important pasuk of the Torah. So let's see some explanations. We'll just see two explanations of the first verse, Shema Yisrael. One is from the Vilna Gaon, and one is from the Sfas Emes. The Vilna Gaon says as follows: Shema Yisrael. This is the positive commandment, which is 172nd positive commandment of the 613 commandments. And that is, what's the mitzvah in the Shema? What are we being commanded to do? We're being commanded to accept upon ourselves, the yoke of heaven with complete unity. It says, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. So we're commanded with all of our bones, all of our essence, to accept the yoke of heaven. And therefore, for this reason, when the Talmud was being written, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi started, how did he start the Talmud? He says, the very first words of the Talmud are, from when do you recite the Shema at night? Those are the very first words of the Talmud. From when do you recite the Shema at hours? Not you have to recite the Shema, but from when are you supposed to start reciting the Shema at night? And so therefore, this is the first mitzvah. Shema is the first biblical commandment that a Jew has to do. This is the first biblical commandment that a Jew has to do. What do you mean? Because you're only obligated in your commandments once you turn 13, if you're a Jewish male, and 12 when you're turned for female. And so therefore, the very first thing we do, right when it becomes dark, when you turn 13, is right away recite the Shema. It's the first mitzvah to do. Right away you do the Shema, at that first moment, And that's why the Rebbe starts the Mishnah with that. And so therefore, that's the first mitzvah. So that's for this reason, the Rebbe, when he was writing the Mishnah, started the Talmud with this approach. Okay, and then the one more idea from the Sfas Emes. The Sfas Emes says the Shema, the Gemara in Brachos tells us, listen in any language that you hear, meaning to say, whatever language you hear it in, you have to hear Hashem is our God, Hashem is one. Everybody should testify about it. And this is what it means, Sof davar kol nishmat el kim yirei. As it says in Koheles, at the end of the matter, this is the last chapter of Koheles. In the end of the matter, everything will be heard, God will be feared. Meaning to say, at the end of it all, the purpose of it all, the purpose of everything, sometimes there's so much details in our faith, and there's so much things that distract us from seeing the essence. The essence is that it's our job to bring about the idea that there is unity of God, and to fear God. Everybody should bear that out, that that's our ultimate purpose. And that's why it says Shema Yisrael, and in the end, that's what we'll be testifying about. Let me just pause for a moment. I see Bruce or April. So now let's on to the second verse of the Shema, which is also one of the most powerful verses. It says, "Ve'ahavta es Hashem Elokecha," you shall love Hashem your God. "V'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol moedecha," you shall love Hashem your God with all your heart with all your soul, and with all your might. So let's see what Rashi says about this pasuk, which is, of course, such an important pasuk for us to understand as we recite this 4 times a day, this Shema. We recite it twice at night and twice in the morning. So what does this mean? Hashem Hashem your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. So Rashi, we start with the Rashi. Rashi says, "Asay tivarav me'ava," that it means you have to perform the commandments. Rashi saying that it doesn't mean that you should feel the love for God. It means you shall do the commandments out of love. Not just feeling love, but you should rush to do the commandments out of love. That's why you should do the commandments. B'chol avavcha, Rashi says, you can't compare somebody who does the commandment out of love to someone who serves it out of fear. Now, one who serves at his master's side out of fear, and once the master overburdens him, he's going to leave the master and go off on his own. And if you serve out of love, nothing will be a burden. So we should strive to do the commandments out of love, not out of fear. That's what Rashi says. And with all your heart, Rashi says, with both of your drives, with the drive towards good, with the Yetzer HaTov and the Yetzer HaRa. Meaning to say that with the drive towards good and the drive towards bad. What's an example of the drive towards bad? So you might think that there are, let's say, the desire let's say you have a desire, let's say a person has an inclination to lose their temper. But that you could be seen as bad, but you could also channel it into a passion. So you serve God with this tremendous passion. Alternatively, with all your heart, that your heart should not be divided about God. That your heart should not be divided about God. And with all your soul, what does that mean? Even if God takes your soul, you should be willing to give up your life for the sanctification of Hashem's name. Meaning to say, even if his life is being taken for God's sake, you should feel love for God at that moment. And with all of your might, what does that mean? With all your possessions. Meaning to say that you have to serve God with all your money. There are some people, Rashi says, there are some people whose money is more precious to them than their body. Therefore, it says with all your money. Another explanation in B'chomo Decha means with every measure that he measures out to you, whether it's a measure of goodness, whether a measure of punishment, whatever God measures out to you, you shall view that as a way of serving God. You serve God with everything that God measures out to you. So that's what it means B'chomo Decha, with all your might. Now, so these are the explanations of Rashi. So we see,
Rabbi?
Yes. Sir, hold on 1 second. Hold on, I didn't see that. Let's just look at the Balaturim on the word. Just what does the Balaturim say here? But first, I skipped 2 Balaturim. I skipped one. The Balaturim says Shema, and the gematria is Taf Yud. The gematria of the word Shema is 410. That tells us that the first Beis HaMikdash stood for 410 years. That's a reference to Tisha B'Av, which is tonight, and we were saying that if we said the Shema, the temple might not have been destroyed. If every Jew had said the Shema properly. So that is also a statement that appears in that context. So the Gemara, the Balaturim then says, Ve'ahavta. What does he do with the word you shall love? He says, Otiot ha'avot. The letters of this word are the same as you shall love. Those are the same letters as the word ha'avot, the patriarchs. Stop for a second and think that. Think about the powerful statement. If you take the word the patriarchs ha'avot and you rearrange the letters, you spell ve'ahavta, and you shall love. So the patriarchs are teaching us with love. B'chol avavcha. So it says the Balaturim, it says you shall love Hashem with all your heart. That refers to Abraham, about whom it says umetzasa es levavo neman. You found his heart faithful. all your soul, this refers to Isaac, because Isaac was ready to sacrifice his soul to God. V'chol modecha, with all your resources, this refers to Jacob. And this goes back to Bill's point, that Baal Turim says it refers to Jacob, because it says, V'chol asher titenli aser asranuach. Whatever you give to me, I will tithe. Means say we have to give a tithe. We have to give 10%. We have to give, well, actually Yaakov said 20%. So, but here Yaakov is saying aser asranuach, 10 plus a 10. So it's 20%. So therefore, whatever you give to me, I shall repeatedly tithe to you. So the Baal Turim sees in this first pasuk of Vahavta, he sees a reference to the patriarchs and to all of the patriarchs who are included in it. Let's look at some of the classic Hasidic explanations on this beautiful pasuk. It says, "V'ahavta as Hashem Elokecha." So it says the Alshik, when it says you shall love V'ahavta as Hashem Elokecha, you shall love Hashem, your God. Hashem represents the attribute of mercy. Elokim represents the attribute of judgment. So says the Alshik, means whether God acts with us in a way we perceive him to be the God of mercy, or whether God acts with us in a way we perceive him to be the God of judgment, our job is the same. Our job is to love Hashem. Of course, the reason why we love Hashem, goes without saying, is because Hashem loves us. Hashem loves us. And so but we don't always understand the love. We don't always understand that it's love. So what the Alshich is saying, whether or not it seems to us that it's mercy, or whether it seems to us as it's judgment, we have to love Hashem. So says the Sfas Emes, how can you be commanded to love? Isn't love something which is personal feeling? We discussed this in the Talmud today. Can a man force a woman to marry him? And the answer is no. But, by the way, this is a tangent. A man can be forced to marry a woman. A woman cannot be forced to marry a man. There's an example in the Torah, you'll think about it, where there's an example in the Torah where the Torah forces a man to marry a woman. You can send me a chat if you figure out the example in the Torah, the case where a Torah forces a man to marry a woman. But anyway, regardless, the Sfas Emes is saying, how can you command somebody to have this feeling of love? So we saw how Rashi answered it. Rashi said that it means that you should do the mitzvos out of love. You should love when you do the mitzvos. So Sfas Emes is Hasidic. He takes a different explanation. His explanation is, in my mind, so powerful. He says, "Shebepnimiyuso shel adam mushrash haregesh shel ahavat Hashem." In the inner soul of a person lies the spark of love of God. God is only commanding it to us because we already all have it within ourselves. We have inside of ourselves a spark of love of God. But we need to wake up this emotion and to take it out from the potential to the active. So this is what it means, you shall love. You should work hard to do this, to awaken within yourself this dormant power of love of God. Wake it up and allow yourself to love Hashem. That's what the Sfas Emes is saying, is that God is commanding us that we already are born with the love of Hashem. Almost like there's a maternal instinct, so there's a spiritual instinct which is born inside all of us. And it's our job to allow that to blossom. Now, we're all born with this love of God. So, this word, and you shall love, do you know how many times it appears in the entire Tanakh? So, this is something that Baal Turim should have told us. He should have told us. I'm surprised he didn't. But the Ben Yair HaKohen tells us that in the entire Tanakh, the commandment, and you shall love, appears 3 times. The Ahavta appears 3 times. Here, Ahavta Hashem Lokecha. Also, the first time is, everybody know the first time it appears? You know this verse? You know this verse? Some say it's the most important verse in the whole Torah. V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. You shall love your friend like you love yourself. And v'ahavta lo kamocha. You shall love him like you love yourself. So says the Ben Yair HaKohen, this is a shot you want to remember. Why is it that Hashem commanded the commandment to love your friend appears before the commandment to love God? Now, the commandment to love your friend like you love yourself appears in Leviticus chapter 19, verse 18. And the commandment to love Hashem appears in Deuteronomy. So why is that the case? So this is the powerful idea, says the Ben Yair HaKohen. He says, it's to tell us that it's impossible to come to a love of God unless we first come to a love of our fellow man. He says, you can't get to love of God unless you put love of Israel before the love of God. And from here we see that which the Ari writes, that before prayer, a person should accept upon himself the positive commandment of Ahavta l'reacha kamocha, and he should have intention to love every single person like himself. So it's to tell us that before we come to the prayer, before we come to love God, we have to put the mitzvah of Ahavta l'reacha kamocha foremost, at the forefront of our mind. This is a powerful idea of the Ben Yair HaKohen. Okay, so this is just some of the ideas about V'ahavta. Then we say, what about B'chol V'avcha? What do you mean with all your heart? So what does it mean to love God with all your heart? So again, Rashi says that there are 2 hearts. It refers to the Yetzer HaTov and the Yetzer Hara, the inclination for good and the inclination for bad. So says the Birkas Yosef, it means that you have to learn the ways of the evil inclination. That you have to go slowly. Today, in levels to overcome them. Today you do this, tomorrow I'll do this, tomorrow do this, meaning to say you have to go slowly in order to defeat him. Let's go to B'chol Modecha, because Bill was asking about that. I want to clarify it. So first of all, we'll look at the Kotzker Rebbe. It said, Kotzker Rebbe says like this. It says in the first paragraph of the Shema, which is said to the individuals, it says, Uv'chol Modecha. But when we come to the second paragraph, it doesn't say b'chol mo'odecha. It doesn't say it in the plural. It says other parts in the plural, b'chol vavchem and b'chol nafshechem, but it doesn't say b'chol mo'odechem in the plural. Why? So the Kotzker Rebbe says when it comes to an individual, it's talking about all your money. There it says b'chol mo'odecha. But when it comes to the community, Parnasa, the sustaining of the community, that's said with all of that's a matter of life and death. If the community is not have enough Parnasa, then there'll be a danger of life. And so therefore it's included with all your souls. As an individual, it's not a question of life and death, says Kotzker. But as a community it is, and that's why it's included in all your soul. B'chol mo'odecha, so again, another explanation. That Chol Nafshcha means even if he takes your soul. So why don't we say Chol Modecha even if he takes your money? And so we say from here, says Reb Pinchas Halevi Horvitz, that when you take a person's money, it's not a big deal if he'll remain faithful to God. Just the opposite. Most of the people who serve God, it's specifically when they are bereft of their money. So the chiddush is that you serve God even when you have your money. So when you give up your life, that's the chiddush to serve God. B'chol modecha means even when you have your money, or specifically to serve God when you have your money, when you're feeling blessed, when it's raining outside, that's when you feel the idea to serve God. Meaning to say, even if you have a lot of money, and especially when you have a lot of money, that's when you have to feel the commandment to serve God. So we'll just do one more that they said about the original Rebbe. So Wendy Lockman has gotten the answer of which man is forced to marry, and we say a big shkoyach to Wendy. The Torah says that person who's ma'ano assaults a woman, he's forced to marry her only if she wants to. That she doesn't have to, but he would force her to marry her if she agrees. So b'chol modecha. So there was the story about a Jew who was very religious, but he was cheap. So Rabbi Yisrael Rizhin said to him, then the first passage of Shema, it's speaking about love of God. It says, "Ubechol modecha," because if with respect to love, everybody has to, when it comes to love, everybody has to love Hashem with all their assets. But in the second paragraph, which is talking about the fulfillment of the mitzvahs and not about love, it says, it doesn't say b'chol modecha. Because if you need to ask, because if you need money, then there's, this is a whole complicated thing. I don't want to get into that. Okay, we'll stop here. I don't explain the original Rebbe. It'll take too long now. But let's stop here. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to